Next up, we have Ruth Whelan and also Ailish Daly. They'll join us simultaneously. If I could just introduce Ruth first. Ruth Whelan is the Academy Manager, Beacon Hospital Research. Ruth is the Manager of the UCD Beacon Hospital Academy and Beacon Hospital Research Institute. A physiotherapist by profession, Ruth was instrumental in the establishment of the Lean Healthcare Academy, driving Lean Six Sigma management throughout the organisation, and also established with her colleagues the Beacon Hospital Research Institute. The institute provides staff, consultants, patients with a platform to translate research outputs into clinical practice and drive innovation throughout the hospital. In addition, Ruth has represented the hospital on many national and state boards. Joining.
So I get the lucky part of the presentation where I get to go through all of the things that we have done that are hugely innovative and show us as world leading in terms of healthcare. Us small hospital in Sandyford really is putting ourselves on the map worldwide. So if you've unfortunate enough to ever have been given a diagnosis of cancer or know someone who has had a diagnosis of cancer, they may have gone through a thing called molecular profiling. This is pretty new, and if you Google healthcare innovation, you can be sure next generation sequencing comes up. We're proud that Beacon has been doing molecular profiles for years now and really fine-tuning that. So just to simplify what that is, if you have a cancer diagnosis, you will have a tumour. And what we in the Beacon do is we look at the gene within that tumour to see where the defect is. And based on that, we can identify what treatment is more appropriate. Would it be chemotherapy, endocrine therapy, targeted therapies, immunotherapies, or whatnot? But I don't know if you remember, 30 years ago, if someone got a diagnosis of cancer, they would have automatically gone into chemotherapy. Now we're reviewing that and seeing, are the various different therapies appropriate for that tumour? Groundbreaking stuff. So really, what we want to show is that this has always been happening in the Beacon. We're doing it now. It's near what was kind of a last approach for cancer therapy is now the norm. You'd expect to get this. Other innovations that we're driving as a university affiliate and as a teaching hospital, training is huge for the Beacon Hospital. And if any of you have gone to cardiology, you may have had an echo, and an echo is an ultrasound of your heart. So we all kind of understand ultrasounds. When you've had babies, you get an ultrasound, very similar, except it's for your heart as opposed to anything else. And it takes probably a technician about a year to learn how to do an echo correctly, because the heart is pretty complex with all the arteries and vessels going in and out. We in the Beacon Hospital have become the first hospital in Europe to pilot artificial intelligence for echo training. This is an FDA-approved technology, and what's basically happening is we're teaching clinicians who would have no experience in cardiology and no experience in using echo within one day to do a correct echo using correct technique and getting the perfect image for that echo. So what would take normally an echo technician a year to learn, this program and this clinical trial that we're putting out will take a clinician who's not trained in cardiology to do as a day. So again, it's showing the importance of using artificial intelligence and capturing it to really have a huge knock-on effect translationally across the realm. You can imagine if we were to put in one of these echoes into a nursing home, you wouldn't be dragging the residents from the nursing home in to get an echo into the hospital. They could do it there. So it's a small step, but will have huge worldwide implications. So we're looking forward to the results of that trial. They should be out at the end of this year. Other innovations, again, I'm skipping through the various different specialities on purpose just to give you a glimpse of what we're doing here in the Beacon. You'll see that lovely picture of me, and I'm about to get VO2 max tested, which a lot of people would know. That's cardiopulmonary exercise testing, or looking to see how fit I am. But what's innovative about this is that, first of all, we're a clinical hospital and we have set the sports lab up within a clinical setting. So I'm fortunate, I don't have very many illnesses or past medical history, but we have a load of patients who want to go back and get fit, who want to start on a fitness journey. So by going in and doing their fitness testing and seeing what their baseline is safely, we can give them a program which can bring them the whole way along. They don't have to be an athlete. They can literally go for 5 minutes to 30 minutes walking. But we have this in the Beacon in a controlled setting. You'll also see me on the right in the bod pod, which was a lovely experience. They were seeing how, now I won't say how fat I was, they were seeing what my body impedance was, which was basically how quickly I burn fat and what is my basal metabolic rate. They're very scientific terms, but it was going to tell me what I have to do to get to a next level of whatever level of fitness I want to be. If you combine the two, you've got a great picture of what your patient is like. So, is there a video here? Yeah, so can we play a video? that gives you an idea. What you saw there is Ailish, my colleague, and she was doing exactly what I'm saying, the VO2 max testing. But what the Beacon have taken ahead from an innovative perspective is using that test, checking what Ailish's oxygen uptake, what her carbon dioxide output was, checking what her heart rate was, looking at her blood pressure throughout, checking her oxygen saturations, and getting a really lovely picture of what her body was doing when she was put up to a sub-maximal test. So when you've climbed, half a mountain, you're feeling pretty tired, you want to know how your body is doing. They've taken that information within the sports app at Beacon Hospital, and they're now using applications that you can use at home. And one of the such applications is Training Peaks. What this allows is that we all have gone to hospitals, we've gotten tests, and once we get the all clear, it's fantastic, we forget about it for another year. But this Training Peaks allows you to comply with a training program remotely in your own home, stay connected with the hospital, and also to gauge how well you're doing, giving you feedback as you're going through your exercise program. You can imagine for an athlete, it's good to have, but for someone who has any medical condition, to know to be connected in, and for someone to be observing you is really the way forward from a healthcare perspective. So robotics, we put it up because it would be a shame not to say we have robotics, but I know most of the hospitals, most of the private hospitals for sure, and I believe, I want to say it was Tala that got a robot in recently. This is no longer a new thing, but I say we got a robot in very early on from an innovative perspective. But what we're doing more differently here is that we're evaluating the effectiveness of this robot, and we're doing simulation training. So not only are we getting the robot in to do various different surgeries, predominantly in colorectal or in urology, we're now looking at how we train our doctors to use these robots and doing simulation training so we can advance healthcare to the next generation. So they were kind of the major things that we're doing within healthcare. But what really I would love to speak today is about how we got to be so innovative and how our tagline is modern medicine and what has helped us to get there and to ensure that we maintain and we honour that tagline. And it's all about partnerships. It's all about pushing our industrial boundaries so we become part of a larger network. That is why we have been so successful as a hospital. So there are plenty of innovation partnerships that we have, and these are just to name but a few. We have an academic partnership with UCD, professional development partnership with the Mater Hospital Lean Academy, plenty of service engagement partnerships with our industry partners, but one namely is with GE and radiology, where we have a managed equipment services, ensuring that we have the most up-to-date radiological diagnostics in the country. So I know if I was sick, I'd want to go somewhere that has the best diagnostics. And GE and that partnership with GE, that managed equipment service partnership, assures us that for at least the next 10 years. We have plenty of stakeholder engagements with Clinical Trials Network, and we have European engagement on our Horizon 2020 projects. And that European engagement is very important because it keeps you cutting edge and making sure that we're involved in all of the European trials that are on offer, or as many as we can be on offer. And then finally, our international engagement, Ailish spoke about, and we shouldn't speak too fast about this because this really drives innovation within our hospital. It's our regulatory body. We all know about HICWA, and we're watching HICWA, and clearly we're all watching the news every day these days, but HICWA is involved in it. Private hospitals are regulated not by HICWA currently, but by Joint Commission International, which is a huge organisation with 1,600 standards, there's 1,600 rules that we have to abide by. They are moving, and they're moving into an innovation space. So as a hospital, we have to show where innovation has driven quality of patient care. And we showed earlier the symbiotic relationship quality and innovation have, and you'll see that as we go through this presentation. So I'm not going to go through all those partnerships, but I'm going to go through one or two that I think may be interesting, people might be interested in for their own businesses. So the first one is the UCD Beacon Hospital Academy, which was set up in 2015 by our CEO, Michael Cullen. And you see Leo was there. He was the Minister for Health at the time. And Des Fitzgerald, who was the Vice President for University College Dublin. It was a fantastic partnership between one of the leading universities in Ireland and also Beacon Hospital, who we are proud about our modern medicine. So putting the two together, we could only succeed. I'm sharing with you our work streams because, again, I feel this may be of interest to various other businesses. These are 2015 work streams. They've obviously progressed a huge amount in the last 5 years. But the work stream was number one was to establish an education and training centre. If you do any research on healthcare innovation or innovation at all, you'll see how you rank yourself from an innovation index is how much you're investing in education, how much you're investing in research and development. The Beacon Hospital back in 2015 had started that journey, and you'll see now the successes we've had from that. The work streams are there, I'll let you read them yourself, but if you flip down to point 4 there, if you can read it, the writing is quite small. We wanted to drive innovation in healthcare in 2015. We wanted to target 2 transformative concepts in healthcare: connected health and personalised medicine. And you'll see as we go through how we have done that. So some very quick highlights for driving an academy within your own business or within your own institute and partnering with a local university or just extending your network is that we've seen 1,700 students through on our clinical places. We've an accredited master's program all by ourselves. So while UCD have accredited the program is run with Beacon Hospital and also with the Mater and Vincent's. But that is huge for a private hospital to be driving education to that level. And when you drive education at that level, especially at a master's level, you're automatically driving a culture of innovation. This is just one of a good example because, again, about 20 years ago, if you look at innovation in healthcare, there was always targeted on doctors and what are doctors innovating and what is the drugs. We don't feel that now. We feel it's very much interprofessional workshops and innovation, bringing the entire team together so that you're not missing one major stakeholder's point of view. Eilish said earlier, we're lucky that we've driven a culture of innovation and a culture of creativity. But ideally, you need to get it from all sides. It can't just be he who shouts loudest gets it. Gets the idea in. One of the most successful partnerships we have, and you'll see the benefit this has on innovation, is our Lean Academy, where we have a school for Lean and Lean Six Sigma management within the hospital. This school is predominantly for our staff and for our consultants. We have, and again, I'll talk to you about what Lean and Lean Six Sigma is for those who don't know, but we've trained 242 staff in the fundamentals of Lean, as in what is Lean and what is Lean Six Sigma. We've also 30 staff who have done 6 months training courses and received professional certificates. And we have 3 staff who are black belts. So it's kind of a little bit like karate, except it doesn't follow necessarily the belts, but you get a white belt, and that's when you do a day's training. And you get a green belt when you do 6 months training, and you get a black belt when you've done a year's training. And black belts, when you've got that sort of management approach, you're highly employable and you're very much sought after. We are super lucky to have this pyramid where we have a lot of staff on white, a moderate amount of staff on green, and 3 strong black belts. So it really sets up an organisation. When we set it up about 3 years ago, this was our goal. So we have achieved this. So you're saying, you're talking about Lean, I don't know what you're talking about. So Lean methodology, why I even mention it is that it's a management approach. And we know from the research that it does increase productivity, it does boost profitability, but most importantly, it improves customer service. But for this talk, the biggest advantage is that it encourages creativity, increases the volume of new ideas, and provides a framework. So when you introduce Lean into any organization, you automatically take a breath, you slow it down for 5 minutes and allow people to give a view that's as basic can be, but you also give them a voice. And that voice of customer, voice of stakeholder is what generates your next innovative idea. So Lean and Six Sigma, they've been around since 1990. Lean is all about improving the speed or reducing any waste. So I doubt there's any business that will present today that doesn't say there isn't some amount of waste in their business. I would love to be that confident to say there isn't. So if you're continuously adopting a lean management approach, slowly but surely you're streamlining your practice, that you're improving the speed of whatever that business may be. And the Six Sigma is predominantly on stats and on data, but it just ensures whatever your business is that you're having less variation. So you're giving a standard product out. And you can imagine from a hospital perspective, that's all about patient satisfaction, employee engagement, greater profitability and improved culture. It has worked really well for us in the hospital. Rather than reading that slide, from a business perspective, from what we found as well, is that we really did drive home what the customer, or for us, what the patient needed, what our GPs needed, what their health insurers needed, and what all our customers were. It also made sure that innovation didn't just happen when we went to a boardroom and decided we were having a quarterly innovation meeting. It happened on a day-to-day basis, and it was a huge cultural shift. So to give you some examples of our stock, of our lean projects that we have worked, a lot of businesses around Sandyford would have procurement or stock. And as a hospital, you can imagine our stock is absolutely ginormous, especially with the growth of the hospital over the last 14 years. So our theatre, which is what we use in theatre to support our operations, it accounts for 52% of our total spend at Beacon Hospital. So those numbers are very large. And we have new procedures happening every single day with changes in consultants and very much complex case mixes. So if you've got a 52% spend in your theatre, you want to make sure you're as tight as possible or you're as lean as possible. So from an innovation perspective, our main theatres decided to use lean, listen to all of the stakeholders, hear what was going on, and they moved for theatres. And this is just a basic output of what the innovative strategies they used were. They did a thing called a 5S. So if you imagine if you walked into the theatre storeroom on the left, my left rather, you couldn't find anything. And if you're turning around theatre cases every 15 minutes, you want to streamline that up. So they use a thing called a 5S, which is sorting it, standardising, sustaining it. And this is the output on the right. What that did is that it had a 91% reduction in the value of out-of-date stock, and it also had a 45% reduction in nurse stock prep time. If you annualize that, the savings are huge. So I guess our point is, yes, you can bring in innovation from robotics and immunotherapy and genomic medicine, but you can also bring it down to a very low level of getting whatever business that you're working on, making sure it's as tightly run as possible. And this was a really good example of that. Another example, and you can imagine we're going to talk about patient flow, we're a healthcare organisation, was how can we use Lean Six Sigma management to improve patient flow and bed occupancy. We put two pictures up there because this project was led out by various different staff members, and we also had our consultant orthopaedic surgeon, our anaesthetist there, but it was very much a team working project, saying we can look at any procedure. We're all very familiar with total hip replacements, total knee replacements, cruciate replacements, but how do we reduce any non-value add in the patient journey? I know for one, if I've ever been in hospital, I always look around going, why am I waiting another half an hour, and why could that not be done sooner? So we try to use that thinking and try to reduce length of stay just for one operation to see is there any learnings from that one operation that we could do. This project, again, the project was we knocked 16 hours off a length of stay for a patient, and that can obviously move on to various different other procedures. But the project in itself for this one procedure allowed us 17 additional available beds per 6 months. So huge. And this is just in one particular procedure. If you can imagine, we do hundreds of procedures. If you're using that lean methodology and taking the learnings from one project to another, the benefits and the profitability and your productivity go through the roof. So again, innovation right from the ground up. This is an interesting one. Everybody wants to eliminate, this is another project, it was about releasing time for the nurses to care. It seems like an odd thing, but our nurses from various regulatory bodies and various different things, they have a huge amount of tick boxing to do in documentation. The world has become very medical legal and it's litigious, so we have to do an awful lot of document. We have to document everything we do in healthcare. So we did what was called a spaghetti map, and you'll see the lines, it's very messy, and it's messy on purpose to show the amount of movement that a nurse would have when they're caring for a patient. And this project in particular from an innovation was, the nurses were saying, we don't get time to care for the patients, we're distributing meds, we're doing X, Y, and Z, we want to sit with the patient and see how they're actually doing. So this project was fantastic insofar as it identified the amount of work we were asking our nurses to do and the amount of work we were asking all other healthcare professions. But most importantly, we're always going to ask people to work, obviously, when they're in the hospital, but it looked at the overlap of what a nurse was doing to what a healthcare assistant was doing and what we could do and how we could role divide between the two. This project has resulted in moving and being more flexible in our professional boundaries and seeing, can we let our healthcare assistants who want to learn, can we train them up to let them help the nurses? Can we free up our nurses so they're able to sit by the bedside and see how that patient is doing and not running in and running out and having to document and more time on documentation? So it's resulted in the nurses being more satisfied. It's resulted in our healthcare assistants being more satisfied and going on a training program. We set up the Healthcare Assistant Training Academy from that, and we're the only hospital in Ireland to recognise how much our healthcare assistants do in a hospital. Again, if you've ever had a relative in a hospital, you'll see healthcare assistants are all over these hospitals. And they don't have a continuous professional development program, not like we have in physiotherapy or nursing or medicine. So we have set up a Healthcare Assistant Academy for our HCAs with the view to broadening their training and then to getting that regulated in time. So another project that we would have run out that really came from an innovation perspective was that we were doing a huge amount of research. So we had our academic and we have our academic affiliation. And again, I said to you, by investing in education, you can drive your research and you can drive your development. So it made sense for us to really formalise up our research institute and to show the world that we were happy to collaborate on clinical trials, on an innovative research that was going on in Europe and also internationally. We took it really seriously on purpose. And again, I think this is why this innovative research institute has stood the test of time and is really expanding at a rate of knots, because we formalised it up and got leadership involved straight away. Our institute board is made up of our medical directors and all of our consultants who are leading their individual areas of specialty. And that's why I'm putting it up there, to show you that you could have an innovation, you can introduce all you want from an innovation perspective, but if you don't bring leadership in from the start, you won't get as much traction as we did. So some of the innovative trials that have come out of this research institute, and this is very timely with COVID, is that Beacon Hospital are the only private hospital in Ireland currently who are involved in a worldwide clinical trial on COVID. This trial is called REMAP-CAP. It's very long-winded. I wouldn't dream of explaining what REMAP-CAP is. But suffice to say, if you or a relative are unfortunately sick enough and you end up in our ICU, and you end up in the ICU within 1 day of your symptoms, you'll be given an opportunity to go on a clinical trial. And that clinical trial is international. And what it's doing is it's very much adaptive. So it will put in what your signs and symptoms are. It will speak with your intensivist or your consultant, and it will decide what is the best treatment regime for you based on the evidence we have. But if you know anything about clinical trials, usually they take about 6 months to a year for outcomes to pop up. This is a much more faster trial in that all of the findings have been accelerated. So you're going into a trial that you know is going to give you the best drugs possible based on your presentation there and then. And the feedback so far for REMAP-CAP is phenomenal. It certainly isn't, you'll hear in the radio, sure, I couldn't say any more. There isn't one drug that'll kill REMAP-CAP yet. There isn't a vaccine either. We're not saying that. We're saying that we're involved in a worldwide clinical trial to try and manage COVID currently. And it's really impressive for a private hospital to be partnering in this. Another one of our clinical trials that we're involved in is called Sprint Sari. Again, this is just a database where we manage with the patient consent. So again, all patient consent. We manage details of how you've presented with any pneumonias. It's put into a database. Worldwide, people can access it, how the patient would have responded to treatment and what is the best course of action. Because it's anonymous, it's international, and everyone then can build on that. And it's what we'll find, and I think we'll probably sit here in 10 years' time and say clinical trials, and we see it now, clinical trials, they do take time. They are accelerating, but for Beacon Hospital to be involved in these worldwide trials now can only be of benefit to us going forward, and it'll welcome more and more trials. So it was a leap of faith that we took, and I think it's proven really successful, and we look forward to welcoming more of these trials into the hospital. Other trials, and again, this is the research and development that's driving this, would be, another trial was a European trial we're involved in on cancer. And again, one of our major service lines would be oncology and cancer care. But we have found that an awful lot of patients are coming to us, they're getting their cancer treatment, they're getting it from the minute of their initial diagnosis right through to their radiotherapy to the end. But there is a little gap, and that's not just for Beacon Hospital, that's worldwide, in that how are we addressing quality of life? How are we looking at functional capacity? And what is the role in society for these patients when they have finished their cancer journey? And this is a project that we worked under the Marie Curie Foundation. It's been hugely successful, and some of the successes of this project have been patients who have undergone breast cancer. They have to rehabilitate the limb that they had possibly had a mastectomy on. How are we teaching that? Can we teach that remotely? Do we have to bring patients back in? How are we looking at the quality of life of those patients? And by using remote medicine, it's really driving the patient satisfaction, the stakeholder satisfaction, and there's some of the outputs that we would have gotten from that. There are many partners in these projects, such as Spain and Germany, and you're getting a viewpoint of all the different health and health cares that are in the European partners. And that's that. So I guess just to end it, I mean, I could speak here all day. I don't know if you want me to speak here all day. The innovation focus, yes, it is on, and you know, of course we're going to do immunotherapy. Of course we're going to do point of care testing. That basically means bedside testing and getting results straight away. We're going to work on biosensors and trackers. Who isn't working on it? We are going to drive artificial intelligence and next generation sequencing, but mostly what we feel has helped is that it's all about pushing our network, pushing our boundaries, and that's why Sandiford driving their digital wellness, driving this innovation is super important to really realise what we have in Sandiford and to push the boundaries and to partner with people and not think in silos, think outside the box. And that's it. Thank you.